Okay, so due date on the microscopy lab changed to Tuesday. Okay, so just make sure you're getting it finished. Now you have your diagram. Since we're about to go over the labeling of the cells, I will expect that you are able to label fairly accurately most parts of the amoeba, paramecium, and euglena. Okay, just do your best. Okay, when we do the cell anatomy lab, I'll expect even better accuracy on the labels. Okay, for right now, I'm mostly concerned with your labels go horizontally, you're following the proper format that we talked about in class last week. Okay, for our cell diagrams. All right, so let's start with the animal cell here. Okay, so we'll start right. We'll start right here with on the very top. Okay, with this kind of sausage-shaped thing with the folds inside. Right, that is a mitochondria. Okay, and the mitochondria is where cellular respiration occurs. Okay, you guys learned that earlier this week. Okay, it is where sugars are essentially burnt to release their energy. Okay, and that is what essentially powers the cell. So you may have heard back in junior high that the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. And that's not entirely inaccurate. That is what it does. But at the high school level, we're going to want you to say something like carries out cellular respiration, burns sugar for energy, something a little more technical than powerhouse of the cell. Okay, all right. This tail here, not present on all animal cells. Okay, in fact, very few animal cells actually have one of these. It's called a flagellum. Okay, and like a sperm cell would have a flagellum. Okay, it's the long whip-like tail that they use to propel themselves. The euglena that you looked at today also has a flagellum. Okay, and it's just a long whip-like tail that it uses to move around. Okay, underneath the flagellum, the next thing here that we're looking at is the outside of the big purple deal. Don't label it big purple deal. Okay, this is the cell. This is the nuclear membrane. And I have to adjust the board here.
Could I now have all?
Okay, so next line down, that is the nucleus. Okay, and that's that. Terrible penmanship again here. That's E-U-S. Okay, so the nucleus, okay, and the nucleus stores the DNA of the cell. So all of your genetic information is stored inside the nucleus. Okay, from there, obviously all of that genetic information that codes for everything the cell needs, they can be accessed. All right, the big purple dot inside of the nucleus is the nucleolus. Right, and the nucleolus carries out or controls protein synthesis. It copies your DNA and sends the copies of that DNA out into the cell so that they can be used to make whatever the cell needs. So if you need to make insulin, then the part of the DNA that codes for insulin gets copied, sent out to the ribosomes, and the ribosomes make it. Okay, but it's the nucleolus that acts kind of like a photocopier. It copies the DNA and sends those copies out. So it is actually what controls all the protein synthesis or making of proteins that the cell carries out.
So like, for example, if there's a virus attached to the cell, the nucleolus would be the thing giving the command to create the virus.
Exactly. Yeah. It receives the messages from the cell that say, we demand this, okay, or we need this, or whatever. It looks for that part of the DNA. If that part of the DNA has been spliced with viral DNA, then it doesn't know that. It just goes, that's where it's supposed to be. Okay, so imagine it's like a blind librarian. Okay, it's like, okay, I know that the book about insulin is supposed to be on shelf 3, section 4, and just goes up and grabs the book. Okay, it's not the right book, but that's what was there, right? There was supposed to be a book about insulin there, but it wasn't. It's a book about how to make viruses, and that sucks. But the librarian's blind, can't tell. Send that out, right? Okay. Next one down, okay, are these little purple, the little dots. Okay, so the little dots here, those are ribosomes. Okay, they work very closely with the nucleolus because they're the things that get that copied DNA. They're the things that actually carry out the protein synthesis. So they can read the instructions and make the proteins. right? Most of the time your ribosomes are attached to this blue stuff, okay? But they can also be floating free in the cytoplasm as well, right? Okay, so the blue stuff that has the ribosomes stuck to it, okay, is called your rough endoplasmic reticulum. You can abbreviate that rough ER, okay? ER stands for endoplasmic reticulum. I don't know who came up with that name, but that's what it's called. All right, so what the rough ER does is it transports the proteins. It's covered in ribosomes that are constantly making proteins. It's very close to the nucleus, so there's constantly being proteins that are being built and moved and whatever, so it's a very busy place. Okay. Now, next line here is pointing at the very outside of the cell. What do we call that? Cell membrane. This is an animal cell, right? So cell membrane. Okay. Function of the cell membrane is to control endocytosis and exocytosis. You need to use those technical terms. If you say protects the cell, you're not going to get it right. Okay? It doesn't always work. Stuff can get through. Okay? But what it does control is movement of material in and out of the cell. Endocytosis and exocytosis. Okay. All right. Next to that, we have the smooth ER. Okay. The smooth ER has a lot of jobs. Probably, other than the nucleus, the most important organelle in the cell. Okay. It's going to break down complex carbohydrates. Okay, so starches, okay, into simpler sugars. It's going to detoxify poisons. Okay, that's a super important job that it does. Right, so your liver cells are full of smooth endoplasmic reticulum. Okay, it's going to help with the synthesis and distribution of fats and lipids. Okay, so that's how membranes get repaired, and that's its other job. Okay, is to repair membrane. Right, so all of those things are taken care of within the smooth ER. So it's got a lot of jobs. Okay, next thing over is the Golgi apparatus. And the Golgi apparatus is responsible for the excretion of wastes and the exporting of like hormones and things like that. So the hormones get built by the ribosomes, but the Golgi apparatus is what secretes them, gets them out of the cell and into the bloodstream or other places, okay, things like that. And it does the same thing for waste products. It packages them in a vesicle, okay, like a bubble, and that goes to the membrane, and it's made of the same material as a membrane. So what it does is it merges with the membrane and just kind of pops, and everything that's inside of it goes out of the cell. Okay, so if it's waste, the waste just goes out of the cell. Okay, and it goes into like your bloodstream, where it can be taken to the appropriate places to be gotten rid of. Okay, but for the most part, it's responsible for getting rid of waste or secreting anything that cell is responsible for building. Okay, so if this was a cell in your adrenal glands, your Golgi apparatus would be packaging adrenaline and sending it to the cell membrane to be secreted. Okay, so secretion and excretion are controlled by the Golgi apparatus. Okay, next thing over, okay, we see this little vacuole, but it's got food in it, okay? That's what the brown stuff is inside. It's not poop, okay? It's food, right? So this is a lysosome, right? That's the stomach of the cell. It contains those digestive enzymes that can break down large food particles into simpler molecules, okay? Would you see one of those in a plant cell? Okay, plant cells do not have lysosomes. That's something only chemoheterotrophs would have. Okay, the next thing here is looking at these things that look like a noodle. Okay, these are part of the cytoskeleton. Okay, they are specifically, and you won't need to label this, but these ones specifically are microtubules because they're actually hollow. But they are simply supportive cable-like structures that are kind of within the cell. They allow it to be flexible and change its shape and twist and whatever without tearing. Okay, so they're very elastic, almost like a bungee cord. Okay, and it's attached to the insides of the cell, so the cell can be elastic and change shape. Okay, not nearly as important for plant cells because plant cells have that rigid cell wall that maintains their shape, so they don't have a cytoskeleton to speak of. Okay. All right, next thing is we've got the two little gear-shaped organelles. Those are our centrioles. Okay, centrioles help with cell division. Okay, they make sure all the DNA goes to the proper side of the cell. Okay, and so that both cells end up with the proper amount of DNA. You do not see these in plant cells because there's no worry of a plant cell having a radical change in shape during cell division because, again, they have that rigid cell wall. Okay, so you only see these in animal cells. All right, then we have this empty little vacuole looking thing. That is a peroxisome. Okay, it contains the digestive enzymes, but there's no food in it, so there's no digestion going on yet. It will become a lysosome if it merges with a food vacuole. All right, and then this is more cytoskeleton here. These are microfilaments or microfibers. Okay, they're thinner and smaller than the microtubules you saw here. Okay, so those are also cytoskeleton. Okay, one thing that's not labeled, you're going to have to draw in here. Okay, do it right here. Draw it to this spot right here that looks empty, or any other empty spot within the cell. Okay. That is the cytoplasm. And that is the fluid material that fills up the cell. Okay, kind of suspends everything, keeps it all floating around. If the cell was full of air, then everything would just fall to the bottom of the cell. Okay, so this is just a liquid medium that kind of makes the cell fluid. All right, questions on any of those? Do we need that picture up any longer? Okay, now we're going to go through the plant cell faster because luckily the plant and the animal cell have a lot of structures in common, and if they're in common, they do exactly the same thing. Okay, so we are going to look at the sausage-shaped thing. That's still a mitochondria. Okay, still carries out cellular respiration. Okay, still got ribosomes. Okay, little free-floating ribosomes. Okay, over here. Okay, this, don't worry about this. I tried to obliterate it, but it's still there.
Could we have all grade 12, L through Z, who either did not get their picture taken the first time around or who would like a retake to please come down?
Okay.
Thank you.
The big green things. Chloroplasts. Okay, only going to find those in a plant cell. They contain chlorophyll and carry out photosynthesis. Okay, so if you have a photoautotroph, okay, they're going to have those. Okay, next to that, okay, these little holes here are called plasmodesmata. You don't need to know that. Okay, then we got the Golgi apparatus. Okay, still a garbage man in the plant cell, gets rid of wastes, okay, or secretes anything. Okay, so Golgi apparatus there. Then we can see the cell wall is cut away to reveal the cell membrane. A plant cell still has and needs a cell membrane because the plant cell's cell wall doesn't actually do anything other than support the cell. It's not a filter, okay? It doesn't do the job of the cell membrane. The cell membrane is behind it. Okay, then we've got the cell wall, which in plant cells is made out of cellulose, which is fiber. Okay, if you take Metamucil, or your parents take Metamucil, it's got psyllium fiber in it. It's basically full of cellulose. Okay, it's a fiber that we can't digest. So it goes through you and acts like a brush. Cleans you right out. Pleasant thought. Okay. And then don't worry about that one. That shouldn't even be there. It's a weird thing that shouldn't even go on there. Okay, then we've got our smooth ER. Okay, lots of jobs still. Detoxifying poisons, breaking down complex carbohydrates, okay, all that kind of stuff. Then we got rough ER. Okay, still doing the same job, transporting proteins. Okay, Nucleolus, still controlling Nucleolus. Okay, still carrying out or controlling protein synthesis. Okay, then we got the nucleus, which is containing the DNA, and then we got the nuclear membrane, which is the outside. Okay, controls what gets in and out of the nucleus. Okay, this big thing here is our water vacuole, and it is also responsible for maintaining the shape of the plant cell. It supports it from within by exerting pressure from within. All right, so it would be like kind of like a water balloon. Okay, the more water you put in the balloon, the stiffer it gets. That's what the water vacuole is doing. It's supporting the cell and pushing everything against the cell wall from the inside. When a plant starts to get dehydrated, it wilts. Okay, it kind of gets soft and limp looking, and that's because the water vacuoles are emptying. Okay, and it's not pushing against the cell walls, and the cell walls by themselves can't support the shape of the plant, and the plant wilts. Okay, and the outside of the cell, of the water vacuole has a special membrane called a tonoplast. Okay, it's just very, very elastic and can contain the pressure, okay, within there. All right, so now you got those labeled. Obviously, Tuesday's quiz will be labeling a cell diagram of some kind. Okay, so make sure you're ready for that. All right, any questions there? All right, please get your desks wiped down before transition.